my friend Tommy asked to speak at this conference, and he said, "I need some advice from you." I was like, "Sure, what you need?" And he said, "How should I do my talk?" And I said, "I can give you the basics, but I can't tell you what to say." I said, "You got 20 minutes to talk, so I would plan a 45-minute long talk." And he's like, "I can only speak for 20 minutes." I said, "You're going to be shocked at how fast in 5 minutes, how much you've said." I said, 5 minutes doesn't sound like much time, but you can talk a lot in 5 minutes. And if you don't have 45 minutes worth of material, you're going to run out of material in about 8 minutes. And what are you going to say for the other 12? And I said, so plan it out for 45 minutes, speak for 20, and have be in a state of grace. Ask a priest to bless you before you go up. And when you get up there to speak, ask the Holy Spirit or the Blessed Mother to speak through you. So that's what I do. And then sometimes, go ahead.
No, I'm going to definitely want to get his name and have a chance to interview him before that conference for sure.
I'll have, honey,
Yes.
Can you text him Tommy's first and last name and his phone number?
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
So he said he would take that advice, and he keeps telling me that he's, he's thinking of things to talk about, and he thinks it's going to be a good talk. He said, I want to start off my talk with a joke about you. I was like, thanks. And he says he keeps thinking about a joke that involves a chatty girl named Jacinta, a blind crippled guy, a tattoo artist, and a possessed guy are riding in a car. Now, that's because there's going to be 4 of us in a car at some point, and it's going to be the possessed guy, Jacinta is chatty, me, I'm blind and crippled, and he's a tattoo artist. And he's like, it sounds like a joke. I said, it does sound like a joke, but what's it going to say? He goes, I don't know. I haven't come up with it yet. He goes, but he says, I want to say it at the conference. I was like, well, they got a sense of humor. Obviously, they got a sense of humor. They want to see me. Oh, that was something I did. I was at a conference, and everybody in the audience is military. And I'm at the front of the church. They're micing me up. And, it's just regular chatter out there. Everybody's sitting down and getting ready for the conference to start. And I pulled out, I used to have more than this, but all my medals and my crucifixes and everything. And the microphone is like right here. And I said, that's my battle rattle. And I put it all back in. And my friend that was traveling with me said, when you shook all your medals and said, that's my battle rattle, and you put it back in, everybody went silent. Everybody sat down. Everybody paid attention to you. I was like, yeah, I noticed. Everybody shut up. He goes, yeah, everybody did. I said, why? And he said, because you spoke their language. He said, these guys are all like Army or Marines, and you shake your medals and say, that's my battle rattle. He said, when they're running through the fields and they've got their guns and their backpack and their grenades and all their stuff on them, it all moves, it all shakes. And all that is called battle rattle. And you said it. You said, this is my battle rattle. And they were like, oh, he's one of us. Let's pay attention. And then when I was done, they asked me, was I former military? Or was my dad or my mom? And I said my dad was a U.S. Marine. He was a sniper in Korea. And suddenly I had like the whole room's respect, and I was like, look at me. Yeah, there's no way that I was in the military. At that time I had a biker beard and long hair down my back, and And I'm like, there's no way I was military.
But that's an amazing image for people to think about. That when you are in the Army and the Marines, you need all that stuff. You want to hear that shake because it's kind of telling you that's there to protect you, or for this or for that. And in a similar way, we need all of that in the spiritual battle.
Yeah, people, in my book, Abortion is a Satanic Sacrifice, in the final section, I teach you that abortion is spiritual warfare. And that if you don't fight a spiritual battle spiritually, you can't compete and you can't win. If you're trying to fight a spiritual battle physically, that's the wrong way to fight. But I also tell you that if you're going to fight spiritually, we have all the tools in the Catholic Church. Everything you could use to fight in a spiritual battle, we have. It originated here. The buck stops here, so to speak. I give 4 steps to shut down an abortion mill. And then there's a couple of other steps involved because somebody went and visited Mother Teresa years ago, and the guy said, I have an abortion mill in my neighborhood, and we go out and we pray in front of it every day. And I had the opportunity to come here, and I took it because I knew if I could meet you, you could tell me a way to shut down my abortion mill. So she gets up, she walks over to her bookshelves, and she picks something up. And she walks back to this man, and she hands him a blessed miraculous medal. And she says, you take this, and you circle that abortion mill, and look for a crack in the building. And when you find a crack in the building, you walk up and you shove this miraculous medal into that crack as far in as you can. And you claim that building in the name of Jesus Christ. And that mill will shut down. And he's like, this is all I do? Like, I don't give a prayer. I don't do anything else. This is it? She's like, yes, this is it. Claim the building in the name of Jesus Christ and shove the blessed miraculous medal into the crack. You'll expect miracles and you'll get them. So he does it. And it takes, I think, less than a year and the mill shut down. Now I've added that into my repertoire. I tell people you can also do that. But my 4 steps is prayer and fasting. And the first time that worked was March for Life, not March for Life, it was 40 Days for Life in Texas. They did it for 9 years. Now they did it 40 days at a time for 9 years. What's 9 times 40?
360.
Right. So we shut it down in 9 years because we did it 40 days at a time for 9 years. But God shut it down in 360 days. Do you think the message might have been that had we done it for 360 days in a row, he would have shut down the clinic?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the case or not, but what's the harm in trying it?
Yeah.
Then there's having a mass said out in front of the abortion mill. And then there's having an exorcism done. Anywhere between 1 and 4 priests in Rockford, Illinois, prayed in one of the 4 corners, some days all 4 of the 4 corners of this abortion mill. And it shut down about 2 years later. And then also having a Eucharistic procession with an image of Our Lady of Guadalupe and people walking behind praying rosaries. And there was an abortion mill in Melbourne, Florida. A priest went out and did it. 2 years later, the abortion mill closed. Then a bishop went out, and there's another mill there. And now there's no mills there. But the bishop went out and did it, and I think 2 weeks later it was closed. It might have been 6 weeks later, but it was still in a very short period of time. The power of the bishop got the mill to shut down. The abortion mill we have here. Did I tell you this story on the last interview? It was in October 2018.
I don't know if you
My
did know.
bishop, Bishop Kemi, went out and did a mass, an exorcism, and a Eucharistic procession at the local abortion mill. And like I said, that was in October. It would have been the same day. If you look up LifeSite News, October 2018, they covered
Wait, can
my
you
talk. They covered
nothing with the
my
Wi-Fi.
I did a spiritual warfare conference with Father Ga.te.som in Toronto, and LifeSite News covered it. And so it appeared in their paper. And then in December at midnight mass, I'm sitting with my family, and my friend is sitting next to me, and she says, Leslie Page just walked in the back door. She's sitting on the back pew. Leslie Page is the lead abortion doctor at this abortion mill that my bishop did all these prayers at. And so after mass was over, we went back to greet her. And she stood up and she looked at us and she smiled, because we were out at the abortion mill every Friday sidewalk counseling. And she knew us, and she gave us both hugs, and she smiled real big, and she said, I had the chance earlier to go to a Novus Ordo mass, but I also had the chance to go to this mass. And I haven't been to a Latin mass in 57 years. And I had a burning desire to come to this. So here I am. And by her coming to the Latin mass, she also decided that she was no longer going to be an abortion doctor, and that she was going to re-embrace her Catholic faith. So she's no longer doing abortions, and she's full on Catholic now. And that happened because my bishop did a Eucharistic procession, a mass, and an exorcism in front of the abortion mill in October. And 2 months later, she decided to be Catholic again and stop doing abortions. And I mean, knowing that he read my book and did that, and now there's a doctor that was heading to hell, now it's heading to purgatory instead, that's a pretty good feeling. You know, our book and our CD set have shut down 53 abortion mills around the world. Now, we only know of this because people call us or email us and tell us about it. So in this year, people have told me about 4 additional mills. So for the longest time, I told them about 49 mills have shut down. But now I've got 53. The average abortion mill murders 1,500 babies a year. 50 abortion mills being shut down is 75,000 babies a year I'm saving. So now I've got an additional 3,000 or more.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I mean, I'm up to like 80,000 or 80,000 plus babies a year that I'm saving. You know, I'm hoping that Mary is my attorney when I get to heaven, because I need her to bring that up of how many children I have saved and what those children became. You know, like how many of them were priests, nuns? Is any of them going to be a pope? You know, what great things did somebody cure cancer? You know, what did they cure? What have they done? Who have they affected? What children have they brought to the church? You know, how many good things resulted from that? You know, and the feeling that I did so many heinous things as a Satanist, and I did 146 assisted abortions, but my 146 assisted abortions, I've currently saved 80,000 children. And it's still not even, because one child, how much is that worth?
Yeah.
You know, but it's such a good feeling to know that I'm not just responsible for this 146 that died, but I'm also responsible for this 80,000 plus that have lived, and, to know that, on my judgment day, I'm not just going to hear bad news. I'm also
Yep.
going to hear the good that I did, the good that I'm responsible for. I've helped people become priests. I've helped people stay in the seminary, and decide that this is their calling. I've helped women become nuns. I've talked to priests and bishops. I'm friends with cardinals. And, I have a cardinal coming to this event. I'm hoping I can make friends with him, even though he doesn't speak English. He has a translator, so maybe, on some level we'll be able to be friendly. I've also met, at the March for Life, I befriended Cardinal Dolan. He took a copy of my CD set, Abortion is a Satanic Sacrifice, and told somebody that he listened to it, and it was wonderful. And I'm also friends with Cardinal Burke and with Cardinal Maffei. Cardinal Maffei, I was hoping was going to be the Pope. He had said that he was discerning the priesthood at 14. He became a priest fairly young. He became a bishop in his 40s, and he became a cardinal when he was 50. He was the youngest cardinal. And somebody said, "You're being fast-tracked to being the Pope." And he's like, "I do not want to be Pope." And I'm like, "That's why you should be the Pope." And, he's like, "The Pope goes to bed after midnight and wakes up at 4. That's not the job for me. I like my sleep too much." And, but I was hoping he took care of me in Auckland, New Zealand for 9 days. And he did a very good job. And I just thought, he's one of the holiest people I've ever met. And I thought it'd be awesome if he was the Pope.
Speaking of Cardinal Simonia, I'm excited. Are you excited about this worldwide exorcism? I don't even think many people
Yes.
have even heard that there is such a thing. Maybe talk about that a little bit.
I did not know that there was such a thing as that, but he has universal jurisdiction, and that was granted to him by the Pope. So, whatever's bound on earth is bound in heaven, and loosed on earth is loosed in heaven. So, there is such a thing because the Pope says there was such a thing, and he has permission to do it. And he's the only priest, as far as I know, that has that authority. And, there are so many people that are diabolically afflicted. It's like, are you familiar with Monsignor Rossetti?
I am, yes.
Okay, so he has a deliverance session it's like the first or last, I don't know which one it is, but Monday of the month. And, you can get in on that. And when it started, there was like 300 people going. Now there's like 10,000 people that go or more. You can send in questions to him while you're there. He'll answer you. He also does deliverance for a wide range of topics. Even stuff that you may not know you have in your past, he's doing deliverance for that. And he prays to different angels and saints and God and all these different things as he's doing it. And that's something a lot of people need. And a lot of people have gotten help from going to that. But imagine having that for the entire world, and you don't have to sign up.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I'm going to be in Ireland at the time, but I'm excited about it. Some people kind of worry about it, but I figure, look, the church has to do something like this.
There's so many people that need help, and a lot of people don't know where to go.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that are not Catholic, and they don't realize that the Catholic Church is the light of the world. This is the Pope isn't just the Pope of the Catholics. He's the Pope for the world. He's the Baptist Pope. He's the Lutheran Pope. He's the Presbyterian. We have 66,000 Protestant denominations, but that's 66,000 Christian groups. And he is the Vicar of Christ. Even though you may not recognize him as your Pope, he is your Pope, because he is who the conclave elected,
Mm-hmm.
and he leads the free world that worship Christ to Christ. And, you may not feel that he's your leader, but, as same thing as with the president. Maybe you didn't vote for Donald Trump and you don't feel like he's your leader, but he is. If he's whoever the president is, that's your leader for the next at least 4 years, regardless of whether you recognize him as your leader or not. It's the same thing with the Pope. He is your Pope, regardless of whether you recognize him as your Pope or not. And he is there to help you. He's there to help all of us. He's there to lead all of us to Christ, and to show us what it means to properly lead. What it means, how to properly worship, how to properly pray, how to do everything that we should do, and to do it to the best of our Catholic ability. And if you're not Catholic, convert. It's not a private party. Anybody can come, but conversion helps.
Yeah.
You've gone silent. Did you run out of questions?
He froze.
Oh, it looks like you froze.
Yeah, he froze.
Hey, you there?
He's reasons.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Okay. Hello? Sorry, I was connected to the wrong the wrong internet this whole time. That's why I was like, why am I having bad internet? It should be really fast. So just following up with the previous question, what do you how do you think we should prepare? Because I almost feel like the tsunami of grace is coming, and then we should dress like John the Baptist and run around and tell people to repent. So almost like there's a big spiritual sale about to hit, like the Black Friday of Black Fridays, and turn like in a good sense, and almost
Right.
how can we get the world ready?
I think before the event, so that you could get as many graces as you possibly can, everybody should go to confession. Look on the schedule and see when the exorcism is supposed to take place, and then get to confession before that happens, so you can be in a state of grace when the flood comes. And imagine Imagine the state of the world when that hits everybody. Imagine the women that might be at the abortion mill that day, and suddenly they're exercised while they're there, and they decide, this is the wrong thing to do. My baby's going to live.
Yeah.
Or the women that have already gotten the abortion that suddenly get a flooding of grace and realize they need to go to confession to confess this, or they're going to a bad place when they die. Or the people that are in poverty of whatever type that means to them, and suddenly they're made rich with grace, and how that feels. You know, and you never know how grace is going to hit you. You know, when the grace first hit me, I realized that I did not sell my soul to the devil when I was 13.
Yeah.
You know, I realized that Jesus Christ was my Lord and Savior. I had been a Satanist for over 26 years when that happened.
Yeah.
I had thought I sold my soul to the devil when I was 13. I thought I was going to hell when I died. And suddenly, Jesus lets me know that I didn't do that, that I'm not going to hell. Not for that, that Satan doesn't have my soul. You know, and that was such a grace. And also seeing his mother and him at the same time, that was pretty awesome as well.
Yeah.
My talk at this conference, my first talk, is going to be Hell on Earth. That's the name of my talk. And it's for those people that have never experienced spiritual warfare that they know of and don't believe in demons. I'm going to tell them what demons do and what they've done in my life and how strong they are and how truly weak they are.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good for people to know sometimes when that light is shown on them, then they realize, you know, that this has been in my life. I just thought that it hadn't. I thought that I'd never encountered it. Maybe it was just my apathy or my lack of zeal for the Lord, or my laziness, or my bad marriage, maybe in those very ordinary ways.
I tell people there's a test you can do to determine if you're cursed. And I've told them what the steps are to do this test. It takes about 30 days. And demons will attack you if you're praying against the right thing. And they're like, so what kind of satanic attack can I expect? It's like anything. It could be anything. But you'll notice that up until you do this test, you basically have no satanic attack. You have routine stuff that might happen once in a while, but now Satan's going to come out of the woodwork to attack you. And they're like, well, give me some examples. I said, okay, last night you filled up your car with gas, and today you're going to be going to confession. But today there's less than a quarter tank of gas in the car. You had a full tank when you turned the car off last night. Also, your tank might have a locking gas cap, so no one could have stole it. Where did the gas go? When you parked your car, it was in your driveway and there was nothing there that could have hurt your car. But this morning, you're ready to go now and you've got a flat tire. It was fine last night. Why is it flat today? You know, you turn on the car and it was working fine yesterday and it's a fairly new car. The engine light came on and it's telling you, it's flashing the warning. Like, you need to do something with it right now, but you're supposed to be at mass in 5 minutes. You know, you suddenly have a toothache that hasn't ever bothered you before. But now it is, but now you're supposed to be going to someplace Catholic. As in everything that you want to do that's Catholic related, you end up falling under some type of satanic attack because of it. I said, it will be blatant. Everything that happens will be blatant. you won't have any doubt that you're under attack. It's like when you're in the military and you're like, how will I know when they're shooting at me? When they shoot at you, you'll know. It's not like I'm hearing bullets whiz, but they're really far away. No. When they're shooting at you, you will not have any doubt.
Yeah. And maybe you can kind of conversely say, if you're not being shot at, you're not in the battle.
Well, that's true as well. I've told people, I talked to a woman recently that wanted to know how to make the satanic attack stop. And I said, well, stop doing the will of God. I said, stop going to Mass. Stop worshiping God. Stop going to adoration. Stop praying your rosary. Stop doing novenas. Stop trying to be holy. I said, you stop all that, Satan will stop attacking you. I said, but I know that when my satanic attack ever stops, I've done something wrong. I've stepped away from God. I have seriously erred somewhere.
Yeah.
And now Satan is leaving me alone because now I'm a child of Satan and I need to go back to confession and get right with God. Yeah. I want my satanic attack to happen because as long as I'm being attacked, I know that I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah,
when your attack stops, you're doomed.
I think that's an incredibly profound thing for people to remember, because sometimes they like I'll get maybe emails or comments where people kind of want to make sure that none of that happens, and I'll just sort of think, Jesus was crucified. Why would, if you're going to follow him, what do you expect to happen? It's going to look something
right.
like that.
He said, pick up your cross and carry me. He didn't say life was going to be a party.
Yeah.
He didn't say that, life is going to be easy from here on. We only had one of his apostles that wasn't martyred.
Yeah.
So expect to be martyred and look forward to the martyrdom because, we used to pray our family rosary at night. It was long. We had a lot of intentions that went in it. And now we just pretty much pray the rosary straight through. But when we used to pray all of our intentions, one of my intentions was that me and my entire family die as martyrs at the same time. And my kids were actually down with this. They're like, not big fans of wanting to die, but if we can all die as martyrs at the same time, and that means we all step into heaven at the same time, they were like, sign us up. It sounds like a great deal. I mean, how long does death take? It doesn't take a whole lot. And then I've heard, and there was a story about a family that was being hacked to death by Muslims. And the Muslims told them, if you convert to being Muslim, we will spare your children. And the parents were like, no, we're not denouncing Christ. So they were going to go after this little girl first. And the little girl, they're trying to like chop her head off or something. And she's laughing and running around and looks like she's playing with somebody. And I think she said that she was playing around with angels. And they're playing like tag with her or something like that. And she's running all around and she's laughing and giggling. And they actually cut off the little girl's arm. She's bleeding to death, but she's laughing. She looks at the arm and just laughs and runs around. And the little girl ended up dying. But her actions converted one or two of the Muslims because they recognized what we're doing is wrong. And she was seeing Jesus and angels. And it changed the Muslims' lives. The girl died, but it's like she probably went straight into heaven as a martyr.
I mean, that sounds like the stories of the early Christians in Rome, how they were persecuted and tortured.
Yeah, and there was a lot of them that had things happen and they smiled the whole time. Some of them sang, like, this isn't hurting like it should be. It's not like they're dying and they're not afraid. Or like sometimes the people are going to be fed to the lions and they walk into the room or into the Coliseum and the lions lay down and just don't even look at them. And they're hoping that the lion is going to attack them and eat them, and they don't.
Powerful stuff. I'm trying to think a few other questions here. That one that's come up is and you kind of implied this in a different place. Not everyone is going to have access, for instance, to an exorcist priest, nor a priest that can read souls. And so people have asked, how do I find hidden sins? How do I better examine my conscience, since we may not have access to even priests that may guide us correctly? But what are some of the best ways you found to really find what sins, Lord, do you want me to confess?
We have on our website, we have a page called something like links and something else. And on that page, we have a PDF of an examination of conscience form. It's from Ignatius Press, and it is very well done. It's probably the best examination of conscience form that I found. I liked it so well, I put it on my website. And you can go download the PDF and print it. And it includes everything under each category of the 10 Commandments. Stuff that when I first saw, I had never seen an examination of conscience form. And I was in line for a confession, and my ex-wife walks up and gets the examination of conscience form down, starts reading it. And I said, "What's that?" She goes, "Examination of conscience form. It tells you about what sins you can confess." And I thought, I'm already coming here to confess a sin. I know that I'm not in a state of grace. And she goes, "Have you ever seen this?" And I was like, "No." And so I started reading it. And it had sins that I did not know were sins. I mean, it listed stuff that I was like, that's a sin? Oh my gosh. So I started going through with a pencil, and I'm checking off stuff that I had done that I didn't know were sins. And I'm crossing off, check. And these people are like, "You're next." I said, "No, you can go ahead. You can skip me. Go ahead." So I've got like 4 people have gone ahead of me. And then this next guy comes up. He goes, "You ready yet?" I said, "Yeah, I'm ready now." And I walk in there, and I've checked off about 3 or 4 things in 10 categories, but 3 or 4 things in each of the 10 categories. So I thought I was going in there to confess one thing, and it turned out I confessed like 35 things. And I said, I did not know this was a sin. I did not know this was a sin. Did you know, now you probably know this, but did you know that even making fun of somebody, regardless of whether you're maliciously making fun of them or just playfully making fun of them, but if you're making fun of them, it's a mortal sin?
I think I only think about that as I go, maybe that's something I should stop, but I don't have that sense of gravity, but we should, we should
Right,
consider that serious.
I did a conference in Pennsylvania a few years ago. It was probably 2015 or 16. And at this talk, I brought up that gossiping is a mortal sin. And then I talked about, it was an event where I talked about how to split up Baptist churches, and that the split comes, there's a monetary split, a sex scandal, and a gossiping scandal. And I explained how that happens. And I went into detail. I mean, I did the deep dive into it. Afterwards, the Q&A happens, and I, answer a bunch of questions. And then the next day, we're meeting for breakfast. And it's the committee that hired me. And I think that was it. It was the committee that hired me. And there's about 8 of them on this committee. And I come in with my ex-wife, and we're being given breakfast, and they're paying me. And then, we're going on our way from there and continue our tour. But they wanted me, and they brought in a recorder so they could record me saying it, that gossiping is not a mortal sin. And I said, gossiping is a mortal sin. And they're like, no, 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 no. You have to, when you gossip, you have to be aware of what you're doing, what you're saying to make it a sin. And I said, if you're driving down the highway and the speed limit goes from 75 to 45, but you didn't see it and you get pulled over, do you still get a ticket? Yeah. Why? You didn't see the change in the speed limit sign. It's not your fault. But you were in that area, and just because you didn't see the sign doesn't make it, that you're okay. I said, right, that's the same thing with sinning. If you're sinning, if you're totally innocent of what you're doing, but gossiping is not innocence. I said, here, let me show you examination of conscience form. And I opened it up and I showed them on that. I said, it doesn't say malicious gossiping. It doesn't say barely gossiping. It doesn't say examine how you're gossiping. It says gossiping. And said, I am not apologizing for saying gossiping is not a mortal sin, because according to my examination of conscience form, it is a mortal sin.
Yeah.
And according to most examination of conscience forms that I've seen, gossiping is on there. I said, so if you've got people that are upset in the church that they don't want their gossip to be a mortal sin, tell them to stop gossiping. And he was like, well, we just probably won't hire you to come back. I said, that's fine. If you don't want to hear what God has to say to you, don't hire me. Hire somebody else that will tell you. Perhaps your priest will tell you. And I said, did you ask your priest? No, nobody asked the priest. I was like, you want to know if something's a sin and you don't ask the priest?
Gosh.
So if they don't ask,
I'm definitely going to look for that, because people want to know, and I'm excited to share that with people for sure.
as well, you can also, when you take the Eucharist and you've got Jesus and you're going to be with him for at least a half hour, why don't you ask him to reveal what you're doing that you shouldn't be doing?
Yeah.
Now, know that he's probably not going to talk to you right now, this very instant. And he may not even be, it may not be him. It may be somebody comes up to you and says something to you. And it might be your child. You'd be surprised the wisdom that comes out of your child's mouth sometimes. Mm-hmm. Or, it might be a total stranger, that you run into on the street, or something you hear on the radio. But God has no limit to ways he can tell you something. And you'll be shocked when that's the answer you needed to hear, and you didn't think it would come from that source. But, when you've got Jesus in your mouth, ask him, how many ways do I disappoint you? What have I done that you wish I would do less of? What do I do that's a sin that I'm not aware of, but it's a sin? What is keeping me from being in grace with you? And he will let you know. You just have to be tuned in to listening.
Yeah. Sometimes those obvious things, like that, we have Jesus right there, that we should ask him and not be afraid to ask, not be afraid that we might hear wrong. He's going to show us in a way that we can understand.
Right. And there's people that will tell you, like, never ask for patience, because then God will test you like there's no tomorrow, and you'll be sorry that you asked. It's like, well, you might be sorry that you asked, but that's his way of giving you patience. I mean, if you want a gift, you should absolutely ask for it. I wanted to be kept humble. And I had a guy that sent me an email and said that I appeared arrogant at one of my conferences. And I took a survey of all the priests I knew and my ex-wife. Everybody said, no, I was not arrogant. And that this guy could have been just a satanic attack. But I took it as an opportunity. I prayed to God and I said, can you make me humble? And could you keep me humble? But I'm a human being and I was born in America. So I followed that statement up with, but could you not do it in the way you do everything else? You know, I don't need to be hit upside the head with a board of humility. Can't you just ease me into being humble? No, he can't do that. The very next day, both of my retinas detached. You know, and people say, you know, you went blind, so what? Well, what's the big deal? How does that make you humble? And I was like, you ever been to a bathroom that your wife can't take you into because it's a men's room and you have to wait for a complete stranger to come up and you have to put all your trust into this man you don't know to take you to the bathroom? You've got to have all your trust in this man you don't know and have never met. And you have to hope that he's not going to, in the words of my dad, rob you, kill you, or do worse. The two groups of people my dad told me to never trust were truckers and bikers. And I got to tell you from experience, the most helpful people in the world are truckers and bikers.
That is awesome.
When you're at a gas station, or one of those large gas stations where semi trucks pull in, and you need to go to the bathroom, and they have a men's and a women's, no family room, and I have to count on a trucker to take me into the bathroom. And they do, and they take me into where I need to go. If I ask for the handicap stall, they take me there. They clean the toilet, they clean the floor, they show me how the lock works, and they tell me, I'll be waiting right here when you're done. I'm going to go to the bathroom, but I'll come back, and I'll be waiting for you. When I come out of the bathroom, they lead me to the sink, they help me wash my hands, dry them, and lead me back outside. And this was the guy I wasn't supposed to trust under any circumstances. You know, bikers have helped me. And I mean bikers that look like bikers. You know, they've got the big beards, the long hair. You know, they got gang colors on. They have like some symbol on the back of their leather jacket that it's the name of a gang. And you know it's real. And you know they're a real biker. You know, they've got tattoos and piercings and everything else. And, you know, this is the one that, you know, my dad warned me about. And they're so nice. They're so polite. And they even, if they cuss, they'll apologize. You know, and they even talk about church and they talk about God. And, you know, and in my mind, I'm like, I'm not supposed to be trusting you, but you seem like a good guy.
Gosh, and then the humility, maybe since your vision's decreased, you don't even have a chance to judge them. You just right. Trust, and then they surprise you every time, I'm sure.
Well, one of the things before I got married this last time, my friend John would take me to different Catholic events. And every time he would take me, he said the prettiest women in the room would sit at your table. And you have these long conversations with them, and they seem very intense. I mean, like you guys are really getting into the conversation. And then they all give you their phone number, or they ask, do you have business cards, or can you give us your phone number? And you give them your business card. And he says, why do you get all the pretty women at your table? And I said, I don't know that they're the pretty women in the room. He said, the prettiest women in the room sit at your table. And I said, well, they see the blind man came, and they know that I'm not judging them on anything. They come up and they talk to me. I will just have a conversation. I don't know who they are. It's a girl, I can tell that, but I don't know anything else about them. But I'm not looking at them thinking, oh, she's too tall for me, or she's short, I like that, or whatever else her body type is. I'm not judging any of that. I can't see it. I said, I'm just having a conversation with somebody that's nice. And I said, what are you looking at? And he goes, obviously not the same thing you were. He says, because I'm a man. I'm looking at, their physical attributes. And I said, I can't see those. So when I married my wife, I told St. Expeditius, I want a woman that I find beautiful. I don't care if the rest of the world finds her beautiful or not. So, but I want to have a good memory when I go 100% blind of this is who I'm married to, and remember what she looks like. But she doesn't have to be conventionally beautiful, although I've heard she is conventionally beautiful. Honey, I've heard you're conventionally beautiful.
It's amazing for me to think, but you have to take that on faith. You don't know for sure.
Right.
I love it,
Well, I used to, when I first went blind, I prayed 20 rosaries a day because I didn't have any distractions. So I was praying. I had time to pray, and I just felt like praying. And I also prayed, there's an Eastern prayer called the Chiotki. It's Chiotki. It has 33 beads on it, and you do the Jesus prayer. So, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of the living God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Amen.
Yeah, I've heard of that, yeah.
It has a crucifix, 11 beads, a spacer bead, 11 more beads, a spacer bead, 11 more beads, and a crucifix. So I wasn't told what to put on the spacer beads, so I put Hail Marys on those. So I got to have Jesus, have Mary and Jesus together. So I do the 33 beads, and I would do that also 20 times a day. But you can do one of those in like maybe 5 minutes, probably shorter than that. So you're doing 20 of them, it's 100 minutes tops. But 20 rosaries, that's like 5 hours. So I would do 20 and 20, and I told people that I had 20/20 spiritual vision, and that gave me, you'd be surprised if you're doing that many rosaries a day. When you go to bed at night, if you wake up during the night, you'll find that you're praying rosaries in your sleep. I didn't know that. I woke up one time, and I'm in the middle of a Hail Mary. And I was like, oh, all right, I guess I'll keep going with that. I wonder how many I prayed during the night. I had no idea. But if I woke up multiple times, every time I woke up, I was praying Hail Marys while I slept. And I love that. It is such a good feeling. And, some demon shows up to attack you during the night, and he's like,
You're ready.
I'm going to go get Zachary King. And he steps into your room, and you're like, Hail Mary, full of grace. And he's like, I can't stand this. I got to go. It's like, what's wrong with this? He's asleep, and he's praying Hail Marys.
Wow.
I can't be here for that.
It's like you're sleeping with one spiritual eye open.
Right. It was such a great feeling during that time. I had just gone blind, and I wasn't mad at God at all. It was like, this was the gift I asked for. This is what people are like, don't ask for those gifts. You don't know how bad it's going to be. And it's like, don't ask for the gift if you don't want it. If you do want the gift, then ask for it and expect it, and expect great things to come from it. I've got videos out, I've got a podcast out and videos out that tell you the secret to getting everything you want. And when I tell people this, they're like, oh, I knew that. They're like, well, do you have everything you want? Well, no. Like, okay, the secret to getting everything you want is to make sure that what you want is what God wants you to have. If you want something, and God has wanted you to have that all along, but you've never asked, so he's holding back the gift, and then suddenly you ask for it, he's like, here you go. I know you want this now. Here, it's yours. You can have this. Do your best with it. And now if it's not what you wanted, think about what you want before you ask. Because sometimes you think you want something, but that's not what you want. You really wanted something else. So maybe you should think of that instead and pray about it. Go to adoration a few times and tell him, this is what I'm experiencing. what do you think I need? What would help me in this case? And then whatever it is that you ask for, be happy when you get it. Be joyful when you get it. Praise God when you get it. And use that gift to the best of your ability to serve God. He didn't give you that gift so you can glorify yourself. He gave you that gift so you can glorify Him.
Man, powerful things to sit with. I know I have just a few more minutes because I know my wife's waiting. Two questions that really for my family, I probably won't even have them. So one is about musicians. Before you imply that people would ask you, what about this guy? What about this guy? Well, these are her. What about? So she really likes Dave Matthews Band. She has more of a history with it than I do. And then Nirvana with Kurt Cobain. So she just asked about those, like, what are your thoughts on those two bands?
I had heard that Kurt Cobain was a Satanist, that he had sold his soul to the devil.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he did it in his own dealings or if he went to a warehouse deal and sold it that way through the Illuminati. But, then he committed suicide. But I've also heard rumors that his suicide was really a murder.
Yeah.
And that there was a famous musician that was paid. He was a scumbag musician, but, famous musician. And he was paid a certain amount of money to go murder Kurt Cobain. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah.
Dave Matthews, right?
Yeah.
I like Dave Matthews when he came out. He's had a couple of good songs, but, I only know of 4 bands that I had to pay for. Everybody else I got in to see for free. And I think I mentioned those 4 bands on my last interview. So, if I didn't, it was Pink Floyd, Metallica, U2, and Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
If I went and saw those, I had to pay. Everyone else I got to see for free. So it's unfortunate that, if they were famous, they did something that was disgusting to get there. Somebody called me recently, like yesterday or the day before, and wanted to know about Kelly Clarkson. That she seemed so innocent and sweet and pure. And I said, well, so did Taylor Swift when she came out, but that didn't stay that way, did it? And everybody has to do something. If you're going to cross the river Styx, you got to pay the piper.
Yeah. And then, this was my stepson. It was maybe more curiosity question. Some of those things like he was just asking about like black masses, what they were. Sometimes when I hear things like that, I think, I don't know if I want to know or if I really want you to know, like what those are or how they're done
Well, I can tell you how a black mass is done, and then you can just put it in the language that,
yeah.
For how old is he?
So he's 17. So he asked, is that something you had ever done or experienced? Like, do Satanists do that, or who does that?
Generally, it is atheistic Satanists that do that, and they steal a consecrated host. Now, isn't it odd that they don't believe in God, but they steal a consecrated host?
Yeah.
And they can tell it's consecrated because when they feel of it, they have extreme revulsion or sickness or anger towards the host. How do you feel that way towards just a piece of bread? And why is it that they don't steal one of the Protestant, Wonder Breads? Why do they steal ours? Because Satan recognizes ours as the body of Christ. When they do a black mass, generally, the way a private black mass is done, the altar is a nude prostitute. And every time they mention the name of the devil or Satan, they have a bell or a gong that they hit. They sometimes read the Psalms backwards. They sometimes pray a rosary backwards. and they have a prayer that they pray about. It's a prayer to Satan, even though some of them that are atheistic, they don't even believe in the devil, but they pray a prayer to Satan and consecrate their host that they're about to desecrate to the devil. And then they do some kind of desecration ceremony. At our Black Mass that we had in Topeka a few months ago, at the Topeka is our state capital, he brought out a consecrated host and he slammed it on the floor and he was going to stomp on it. And a Catholic guy dove on it, grabbed it, and consumed it before he could desecrate it. And when they lost their host, they stopped the Black Mass. There was no point to keep going if they didn't have a host to desecrate, which is the point of the Black Mass, is to desecrate a consecrated host. In the first Black Mass that I went to, I've never participated in one, but I've known of them and I've watched them. It is done sort of like theater. So they punted the host, they threw it, some guy dropped like his elbow down on it. A woman lifted up her robe and she was nude underneath and she sexually assaulted the host. And then the final guy to get it threw it in a cauldron that had fire coming up out of it. So he threw it in the fire. And so they consumed the host with fire. But when I saw all that, I'm sitting pretty far away and I asked, "What's that?" And they said, "That's a host, like for communion wafer." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, the Baptists do that like 4 times a year, every 3 months. And it's like unleavened bread and a thimble of grape juice." And it was like a remembrance ceremony. And if you weren't a Christian, you weren't allowed to participate. And, he's like, "Well, some people believe it's God." And I thought, who would worship a piece of bread like it's God? That's silly. And, then I watched all they did to it. And I'm thinking, why are you doing this to a piece of bread? Like, why is she sexually assaulting a piece of bread? Why are they punning it around the room? Why are they cussing it out and flipping it off? Why are you throwing it in the fire? I mean, I didn't get anything they were doing until I attended a Catholic Mass. And then it was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
This all makes sense now. Seeing what a real altar was and seeing what the Eucharist really is and recognizing it for what it is, then I realized the abomination that I witnessed.
Yeah.
When I was witnessing it, no idea what I was looking at. But once I understood, then I was apologizing to God for being there.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll give him kind of the summary, but yeah, it's tragic, those things that happen. I'd heard the thing that happened in Topeka. Incredible what that man did.
Yeah. It's also, isn't it funny that they don't steal that consecrated host from the 66,000 Protestant denominations?
Yeah. They know that it's real.
Right.
They can sense it somehow.
Yeah, it's the anger or sickness from touching the host.
Yeah.
Remember that host is 100% love. And he's going to, there's priests that believe that he leaves the host so it's not desecrated. But I don't believe he does that. I believe he stays in there until they do whatever it is they do with it so that they have his grace with them until the very end, in hopes that one day that grace will affect them. That one day that person is going to be walking down the street and pass a Catholic church and go, wait a minute, this is where those hosts come from.
Yeah.
Let me see what else is in here. And he goes in and sees icons and pictures and crucifixes and sees the tabernacle and sees a priest and realizes, maybe I should talk to this man. Maybe I shouldn't be stealing his host. Maybe I should ask him what exactly that really is. Because, I'd imagine most Satanists don't know what that is. They know that they use them in the Black Mass, but why? Why would you use, and why would you take the Catholic host and none of the others? Why? Let's say it's the day that the Baptists are doing their remembrance ceremony. If you ran in there, grabbed their ciborium, and took off running out the door, they're going to try and get their ciborium back because those are expensive. But they're not going to care about the wafers that are in it.
Yeah.
Every church that does that, no one cares about that little wafer.
Yeah. They're not going to risk their life for it.
Right. They're not going to risk their life for it, but we will. What's the difference? Why are we willing to give up our lives for a piece of bread and no one else is? There's a video somewhere that shows somebody that brings a bale of hay and a monstrance into a barn. Or I think it's a barn. And they bring a donkey in there. The donkey hasn't eaten and he's hungry. And the bale of hay is right there. But they also bring in the monstrance and it's got Jesus in it. And the donkey genuflects and stays bowed down to Jesus until they remove that, and then he tears into the bale of hay. And it's like, all right, why is it that the animal we make fun of, because it's a donkey, they're stubborn, they're stupid, it knows God, and Protestants have no clue. They have the opportunity, if they just converted, they could have the body and blood of Christ 7 days a week. And yet, they'd rather stay ignorant and not know that's the body and blood of Christ and not take the Eucharist every day because they don't believe Mary is anything special, or they don't believe that we really worship Christ, or they believe that we're satanic. They have all these things that they believe about us because somebody told them that, but not because they asked a Catholic and found out the truth.
I think we keep praying, and maybe this conference with that worldwide exorcism will remove some obstacles that are there, so that maybe they can start listening and open their hearts to these things. Protestants and everyone.
That would be fantastic. I'm also, maybe this conference will open people up to the, what's that event called? The
illumination of conscience.
The illumination of conscience. Maybe this is the step we needed to open everybody's heart to be awakened for that.
Yeah.
So that when that happens, like we're doing a 90-day chaplet right now to Our Lady's Tears. And included in that is that everybody that hears that message converts to being Catholic.
Yeah.
We also have in that prayer that all the faithful lived through 3 days of darkness.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if there's going to be a church event, like if we as on the human element are going to have some role in bringing about these things, other than just God choosing it whenever he wants, I would imagine
Right.
It would be an event like this that would pave the way for it, if not usher it in completely, or the
Right.
start of it. Well, a lot to chew on, Zachary, just like last time. We'll see where God takes some of this. It's been an incredible pleasure. Karen talked about the three of us talking. Let's see what happens, because sometimes with these videos, there's like so much to unpack that it takes me just a couple of weeks to figure out how to kind of like piece them into little videos for people to kind of digest. But
Okay.
let's see what God does.